Welcome to Positive Philter with your host, Philip Wilkerson, a podcast that focuses on friends, family, health, and career with a little self-help around the way. Please join me in this journey for self-improvement, and I hope that what I have to share will make you a better person, thus making the world a better place.
Let's do it.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Philip Wilkerson back with another episode of Positive Philter. Today, I'm joined by a very, very special guest. Actually, you probably heard his name multiple times, Dean Bokhari. Now, the thing about Dean is I dubbed him as my podcast mentor. And a long, long time ago, almost 2 years ago, my friend Sam Nang said, hey, you want to do a podcast? Here's my boy Dean. You need to reach out to him. And being the guy that I am, I said, sure, I'll just reach out to him. I thought it'd be like, a 5-minute conversation. And this dude, Dean, legit broke down step by step how to start a podcast. And what I did is I took his advice and I started a podcast. It was that simple. And when I say it's that simple, it's because it was simple for me to reach out to this person. And he gave me his time. And I followed up with what he said, and that's literally how usually mentorship and helping other people out happens. Like people give advice. All it is, the matter is just taking that advice and actually doing what people said, the people ahead of you. So, Dean, I kind of did said you're my podcast mentor, but tell the listeners about yourself.
All right. Well, thanks for that awesome introduction, Phil. I appreciate that, man. That was a good one. All right, a little bit about myself. I am a writer, speaker, podcaster, and entrepreneur. And basically everything that I do centers around the self-improvement arena. And so whether I'm writing on one of my websites or my blog, or whether I'm doing a podcast, or whether I'm speaking to an audience or a group of people, it's always about how do you better yourself in some way. And not in a preachy way, because one thing that I always keep in mind is that I like to talk about things that first I have tried myself. If I haven't tried it myself, I don't talk about it. And if I do, I let people know that, hey, I haven't tried this out, but I heard this is a good technique. Or, I read about this. I haven't tried it myself, but ideally I try things myself. I use myself as a guinea pig, see if it works, and then I write about it, I talk about it. And I try to help other people with it. My big thing is, as soon as I learn something and can apply it, and I find that it's actually effective, I want to share it with people immediately. And so that's what I do on my day-to-day. In some capacity, I'm either sharing in some capacity about personal growth, how to live a more meaningful life, how to be more productive, how to be more effective in your personal life and your professional life, how to live an optimally fulfilling lifestyle. That's what I'm all about. So helping people with that.
And so background, your lifestyle, you're doing this now, all right? And you're Mr. Development and Productivity now. But let's go back to the college days. And these are the days where you met Sam Nang. Were you always
who's
like
that?
Oh. Shout out to him. He just had a baby girl. So that's awesome. Zena. So shout out to Sam Nang. But going back to your college days, were you always like this? And what was, if you weren't like this, because a lot of people are seeing you now at this point, what started this journey to being the optimal self, as you say, or the best version of yourself? Take us back into that time machine to where you started.
Absolutely. Yeah, by the way, definitely shout out to Sam Nang, man. That's my brother right there. He's one of my best friends, and I'm sure that your listeners know about Sam, right?
Yeah, he's been a guest multiple times. He's also, I told him, he positively trolled me because he called me Positive Philter for about 6 months before I even dropped an episode. So I had no choice but to start this podcast because Sam Nang put that out there on social media as Positive Philter. And I was like, yo, if this dude doesn't stop everyone's going to think I'm a liar or a fraud. So he kind of trolled me into actually starting this podcast.
Yeah, I remember you guys were talking about that on the most recent episode I believe you did on bodybuilding with him. So anyways, yeah, my journey kind of began in my senior year of college, sort of as I was in my college departure, like as I was exiting college. So towards the tail end of my senior year, I was in a place where I thought that I knew what my goals were and what my career ambitions were, but those ambitions weren't really for me. They were for other people. Like I was saying that I was going to graduate from college, go to law school, and become an attorney because, hey, I mean, growing up, whenever I said I wanted to be a lawyer, everybody said, "Oh, wow, that's great. That's wonderful. It's so good that you're going to do that." And, I just kind of continued to receive that external validation, that positive reinforcement. But really, it was empty. It had no substance because I didn't genuinely care about that. I didn't genuinely have a fire within me to do that. And so I came to this realization sort of at the tail end of my senior year, and I was like, all right, what am I going to do? Really, what am I going to do with my life? And my life was a mess. The girl I was dating at the time had just broken up with me. I thought that we were going to get married, and that definitely did not happen, which turned out to be a good thing, thankfully. And things were, just being the typical fraternity college guy that you see, the nonsense, the stupidity, and just like the no real organization in your life. But that comes to an end at some point. And for me, it came to an end with a train wreck. Like I was just like, man, this is a mental train wreck. Like, what am I doing? What am I really going to do with my life? I don't know what I want to do. I don't have any real ambitions or goals. I got to get it together. And so I just took a job, my first real job out of college. And it was for a real estate development company. I worked there for 3 months. And I said, if I continue to do this, I'm going to kill myself. And so I figured out a way to get out of that. And I ended up moving to California. And from living in Virginia to moving to California, which is where I always wanted to be, I wanted to try different things. I wanted to see and figure out what I really wanted to do. And I thought, okay, no better place than California to do it. I can try out a bunch of stuff. I was also doing like some modeling for a little while there in Virginia, and I thought I could do that in California. Complete failure. Definitely did not make it as a as a model, but I figured.
I'm going to stop the listeners right now. You can't see him, but he's quite a handsome gentleman. So I don't know why the modeling thing didn't work out, but you got the.
Yeah, man, and I'm glad it didn't. I'm glad it didn't. It would have probably bolstered my ego even more and made me even more of a jerk, and I never would have been able to really go and embark on this personal development journey of mine.
Yeah.
And so, I did that. I it didn't click, and it wasn't really a successful path for me. And I also ended up working for a tobacco company.
Ooh.
The second largest tobacco company in the world, and British American Tobacco, and they're the folks that make, those Camel and Winston and all of that other stuff. And I needed that. I took that job because I really needed to pay my way. I needed to pay my bills. I needed, to live a life like anybody does. And at that point, I was 20 or 21 years old. I hadn't thought about the moral implications of working for a tobacco company. I thought, I'm just going to do this for a little bit and then I'll quit a few months later once I figure out what I really want to do. That didn't work out. And I ended up getting promoted and making more and more money. And I kind of ended up in what some folks would call golden handcuffs, right? Where you're in this job. You don't necessarily love it. You don't necessarily hate it. You're just kind of like, whatever. which, by the way, a statistic for you, 70% of Americans, according to Gallup, are in that position where they don't necessarily, they're not passionate about their work. They don't hate it. They just are kind of like, meh, you know, it is what it is. It's not what I really want to do, but it pays the bills. And I think that's kind of a sad state to be in, because we spend 60% of our waking hours at work. And I think it should be something that we really thoroughly enjoy, or can figure out a way to enjoy. And so, you know, one thing that I couldn't get myself to enjoy was contributing to the death of 29 million people per year. And that really came to a crescendo for me. The inflection point was when just one day I was sitting in my car, I was about to go into this meeting, and I literally broke down crying. And it was all kind of like in the back of my head. I was like, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be doing this. It's not my thing. Yeah, I'm not passionate about it. It's not helping people. It's hurting people. It's killing people. And at that point, I'd already been doing some work on myself, reading more, and sort of developing myself from the inside and thinking about what really matters to me. And it just all kind of hit me in one big rush, ironically, as I was about to go into a work meeting. And I just had this breakdown, and I quit the week after.
Okay, you didn't quit that meeting. You didn't pull a Jerry Maguire.
Well,
you left
I didn't go into the meeting. I definitely did not go into that meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I drove out of there, man. I drove out of there.
But you composed yourself and did it a week later. You didn't like.
Yeah, so I did pull a Jerry Maguire.
Yeah.
But yeah, and you know, after I quit, I really hit a low point, because I figured I can, you know, I want to share this stuff that I'm learning with the world. I want to help other people. I want to be a motivational speaker, and I want to do all this stuff. Yeah. And dude, you know, it didn't quite work out that way, because it doesn't just happen overnight. Nothing happens overnight, no matter what you're doing, right?
Right on.
And so I thought that I could make this all work in just, you know, a few months and get myself going again. But it was a hard realization for me when I was sitting in my kitchen one day and the electricity went out because I couldn't pay the bill. And that's how low of a point that I got to before I finally was able to pick myself back up and build my business, build my speaking career, start writing and sharing the knowledge that I'm learning from all of these books that I'm reading and all these experiences that I'm having. And slowly but surely, I was able to, I literally built my business from the kitchen of our one-bedroom apartment that my wife and I had just moved into after we had gotten married.
So you said your wife supported you. So when you quit your job, you were in a relationship with your current wife right now?
Dude, when I quit, we had gotten married the week before. So I quit a week after we had gotten married.
Shout out to her. Shout out to her. We're going to do, that's quite the woman. She's a hero right there.
She is a hero.
So when you told her I quit, you were like, I'm not feeling this. What did she say?
She was actually my biggest supporter. She would actually tell me for up until that breakdown that I had, you know, we had been talking about how she's like, you really should just quit. You don't want to do this. I can see it in your body language, the way that you're carrying yourself. You're not Dean, like you're not who you are, because this job is draining you. Now you're thinking more and more about the actual negative impact that you're having. And she was like, you need to just quit. You need to quit. And I'm thinking like, well, this is a very well-paying job. How are we going to pay our bills if I just quit? And I'm thinking about all those things, because that's a huge risk to take. You barely even started your own business, and you're going to quit your full-time gig. That's a scary situation to be in. And you know, but we made it, and we figured it out. And you know, now thankfully I can say that we are in a fantastic place. Yeah. But I wouldn't be in this place if I hadn't made those not necessarily well-informed decisions, but I hadn't made those risky decisions and really followed something that I found meaningful. And not to say that this is good advice for everybody. I'm not saying anybody in the, anybody listening should just bounce, right? Nobody should just quit, because it's different for everybody. There's a little bit of luck involved. I don't like to really shine light on that, because I think effort matters more than anything else in the world.
Yeah.
But there's always a little bit of luck involved. But for the most part, it's sheer effort, will, building the habits that you need in order to be successful, and staying consistent. And so, yeah, man, that's a sort of, snippety, distracted version of my story. Sorry it wasn't more polished for you.
No, that's perfect, because I want to say, like, a lot of people are seeing or going to hear, or as a follow-up, see Dean Bokhari now, like the success. But a lot of people, they see life as a marathon, or you're training for something, and you see a lot of people at the end of that, or not the end,
Absolutely.
but a successful. What was kind of jumping back? What was one of your first speaking engagements in front of people, like an audience? What was the way you first get started to being a writer? And what was one of your first steps for being a podcaster? So go back to those things and say, like, what was your first speech in front of people? And then we'll go, what's your first writing engagement when you wrote your first book? And then what was your first way to get into podcast?
Yeah, so the speaking thing, that was interesting, because right when I'd moved to California, I was taking this acting class. And that was another thing that I realized that I definitely did not want to do, because not to say that acting is not good or anything like that. It's a beautiful art, and you need to be skilled in order to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, for me personally, it was, I don't want to pretend to be anybody else. I want to be me, and I want to be myself and present myself as fully and purposefully as possible with the work that I do. And so I realized, okay, that's not for me either. That's fine though. I tried it, and now I learned from it. So let me see what else there is. And right across the hall from my acting class, there was this other class that trained people on how to become a host. Become a host of a TV show, or of a radio show, or of a podcast. And my acting teacher was actually the one who turned me on to it, because he was like, dude, Dean, the way you are is something that is unique and different, that I don't think that acting is a good fit for you, is basically what he said. He was like, because every time you try to act, the real you comes out, and you want to go into motivation mode and talk about other stuff. He was like, you need to just go across the hall and check this place out, and see if you can weave the personal development and the self-help stuff and the motivational material into some kind of a speaking career or a hosting career. And so I thought, okay, that's a good idea. I'm going to try that. And when I tried that, it clicked. I was like, oh man, okay, so this is what I really want to do. Because going in there and practicing in front of all these groups of people, and I had a little bit of experience speaking prior to that, because when I worked for in the corporate world, I had, one of my positions was going from place to place, like different conference to conference, and training others on how to become more effective in sales and things like that. And so that's when I kind of got my first taste of, hey, I really kind of like this. And then when I moved to California and went into the hosting classes, I was like, man, this is where it's at. I can really hone my skills here, and I can really learn how to share my message as effectively as possible. And so I started doing that. I started hosting different little gigs in LA, and then booking small speaking gigs, going to different places like Toastmasters and the NSA, not the government NSA, but the National Speakers Association. And that's kind of how I got started with that. And then that slowly ended up building into other invitations for companies and for groups of people and organizations, nonprofits. And so that's kind of how it all, began.
So it started organized. What was the classes? Was it a community college, or was it an acting school? What were the classes?
It was so I can tell you exactly what the name of the class was if anybody wants to look it up. It's
Yeah.
called Become a Host,
Yeah.
and it was taught by Marky Costello. Very intense woman.
Nice. But see, and that's great. I think that's excellent that you know, like now it makes perfect sense that you do have definitely a voice. I mean, you also have a voice but a face for TV. What I heard is I have a voice for radio. I mean, a face for radio. So I'm not as handsome as you, but
man, you got a face for TV, brother.
Yeah. But with that being said, it definitely seems like when I listen to your podcast, it seems very, not say scripted because it's not the word, but it sounds very prepared and clean, and it sounds like you work on your craft of talking, and you sound very great. So now it brings back hearing this from you. It seems like, okay, Dean actually trains in this. He actually practices in this. It gives me a lot more insight. That's really awesome to see that people can get better through learning this stuff. Or if they want to become a podcaster, you can learn. You can practice this stuff. If you want to learn how to talk better, so that's excellent.
Yeah.
And so that's how you got into podcasting. Is this your first show? Like as soon as you left that class, you're like, yo, I'm gonna start the meaningful show, or no?
Yeah. So. Yeah, literally, like after I left, I actually wanted to try a bunch of different things, and so I started a bunch of things, and they failed. They didn't work, and again, that's okay. I think that no matter what we're doing, we need to be okay with failure, and we can't allow that to prevent us from trying new things and trying different things. A lot of people get frozen by failure. They let it prevent them from moving forward. They just get crushed by it, and I think we need to keep that in mind. I kind of think of myself as a short-term pessimist and a long-term optimist. Meaning,
okay.
I know that stuff is going to fail when I try it. More things are going to fail, but over the long run, I'll achieve my goal. I'll figure out a way to get there. There's many different roads to the same destination.
Got it.
So. Yeah, and so I started a bunch of different shows and different things, and they just didn't click. They didn't work. They didn't pick up any traction, or I started to kind of lose that fire for it. And so I ended up starting Meaningful Show, and this was one that I really stuck with. I said, no matter what, I'm going to stick with this, and I'm going to make it work. And I had honed in on exactly what my topics were going to be, what I was going to discuss. And I just did it. And I did it, and I did it, and I did it. Week in, week out, every single week. And I said, I'm going to write and I'm going to podcast one article and one episode every single week, no matter what. And I did. And
schedule, yes.
Eventually, what happens is it picks up slowly. People trickle in and they start listening and tuning in and reading and subscribing, and then a little more comes, it trickles in a little bit more, and then it just kind of stays at that low level for a while.
Right.
And that's where most people end up actually getting discouraged and quitting, because most people don't have the tenacity, the long-term vision to stick with something over the long term, unfortunately.
Right.
And I'm on a mission to help people change that. But one of the things is you stick through that, what bodybuilders call a plateau, right?
Yeah.
You can't get to the next level until you hit a plateau, and you stay on that plateau for a while, and then boom, once you stay on that plateau and you keep on pushing and you keep on lifting and you keep on going in there, then you can break through that plateau at some point. And so a lot of stuff in life is like that.
Right.
And
that's true.
My podcast was like that. For the longest time, it was just crickets, dude. And then it picked up, and then it just stayed at this kind of mediocre level for a long time. And then all of a sudden, boom, it hit its climax, and it just really grew and blew up. And, I'm lucky to have over 30,000 people that tune in every single episode that I broadcast, and it's awesome. And I hope to continue growing it and continue sharing what I learn with people because I'm always learning and I'm always trying to better myself.
True. In fact, I mean, that's I read that too. Like a lot of people's podcasts, if they make it past like it was like I can't remember the number, like 6 to 8 episodes or 6 months of doing it, then they'll do it for longer because a lot of people start a podcast, do like 2 episodes and quit. So when I started my podcast, that was my goal, was just to get to like 8 episodes. And,
Yeah.
And I like what you said too. Eventually, for me, my plateau was like I was just doing them here and there. And then one day I said, I'm going to do an episode every Monday, or release an episode at least every Monday. And I like that, like the goal setting of this is what happens every Monday. And so I totally agree with that. Like, I'm totally in line with that. And I definitely like listening to your podcast because it helps me reset. I remember the day about gratitude, and I started writing down 3 things I was grateful for after listening to your podcast. And then after that, I bought a 5-minute journal, which already had the 3 bullet points, which kind of gave me structure. For you individually, it's new topics, but, you know, obviously new different aspects of being a better yourself. How do you study productivity and goal setting for yourself? How do you study this stuff? And how do you find new topics? I know, and plug a little bit about QuickBooks and how you use QuickBooks for yourself.
QuickBooks is a financial management software, brother.
Oh, not QuickBooks. You know what I meant. You know what I meant, not QuickBooks.
I'm just playing with you, man.
No, you got me.
Yeah, so you must mean FlashBooks, right?
FlashBooks, that's it.
I had to say something.
No, you know what I meant. FlashBooks, QuickBooks. It's in my mind. That's because I'm going to have to use QuickBooks eventually for my business.
Yeah, tax season.
Yes. So yeah.
So FlashBooks, that was actually born as a result of my ongoing and constant, you know, pursuit of growth and bettering myself. So that was the first big sort of business that I started, and it's a what we do is we take nonfiction books, top self-help and business books. And we condense them because a lot of people, especially in this day and age, unfortunately don't have the time to, or decide not to make the time in their day to actually sit down and read. And that's okay. Everybody's priorities are different. Some things are more important to others. And so, but for those people who want to get the key concepts from a book, but don't want to sit there and slog through 300 pages, we take that, we read the books, and we condense them down into 10 pages of the key actionable insights from the best books out there from business and self-help. And that was sort of born as a result of me have always had the habit of reading books and taking notes, right? I've always taken notes on my books. Eventually, I started actually transcribing those notes to Google Docs and saving them on my computer. And just eventually I started telling people, like sharing them with my friends. And one of my buddies was like, "Hey man, you got those notes for 7 Habits of Highly Effective People?" Yeah. And I was like, "Yeah, of course." And I sent him the Google Doc, the link. I shared it with him. And unbeknownst to me, he shared it with one of his friends, who shared it with one of his friends, who shared it with one of his friends. And next thing I know, I've got all these people coming up to me asking me for different notes from different books, and I had a lot of them just because of my own habit of reading and keeping notes, because I like to refer back to them, and I think it helps me learn the things that I read more effectively. And so that's when I realized, I was like, man, there's a great business idea here, and that's how it started. And in the beginning, it was just me just reading and writing down these summaries and taking these notes and publishing them and charging people. And, you know, now we're blessed to have 22 writers, employees around the world, and, you know, helping me with this. And the studio that I'm in right now is actually where I record all of the audiobook summaries and the podcasts and everything.
Dope.
And so, yeah. That's how that was kind of started. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does perfectly. But for yourself individually, do you read full books?
Not as often as I used to. I used to crank out like a book every few days. Now I'm at, what's up?
A full book, you are getting them.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. But now I'll get to a book every week to 2 weeks. I read about a book a week a book every 2 weeks, depending on how big the book is,
Okay.
how deep it is.
So you still
I'm also, by the way, not afraid to abandon books. If I
okay.
read a book and within the first chapter to two, it hasn't hooked me and I'm not interested, then I don't go past that. I give it a chance, a chapter or two. But if I'm not hooked, if I'm not interested within the first chapter to two chapters, then I abandon it. I don't mind.
That's a reading strategy a lot of people don't do, especially for themselves. And I'm one of those people that try to finish every book that I start, and sometimes it kind of backfires because then I don't finish the book because somehow. So, but with that being said, what books come to your attention to, in regards to studying for yourself and making yourself a better person? How do books come to your attention? Do you still go to the bookstore and browse the aisles, or you look at Oprah's top 10 book list? How do books come to your attention for yourself?
Yeah, it's actually funny. Like, we are subscribed to O Magazine, Oprah's magazine.
Yeah.
And it's actually subscribed under my wife's name, but I'm the one who actually reads it.
Yeah, no, right.
Dude, I love Oprah, man. She's the best. And yeah, I do actually browse through her picks, her nonfiction picks.
Mm-hmm.
And that I look at the New York Times bestseller list, Amazon's bestseller list to see if there are any books that are coming up that may not be on my radar. And then there are resources for publishers, because FlashBooks is technically a book publisher. And so there are resources like netgalley.com, which is a place where publishing houses can go to and learn about upcoming book releases before they come out. And they'll send you the books. And sometimes that is a great way for me to find out. And then also, now we have developed relationships with some of these major publishing houses. So what they'll do is they'll actually send me books.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In advance, like before they come out. And that's how I'll find out about them too. And so there's a bunch of different ways, man, But for me personally, one rule that I kind of have is I like to judge books based on their longevity. So a lot of books come out, they catch fire, and then they just kind of, get forgotten about. So if a book has been around for ages, for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 plus years, 1,000 years, like books like Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. I mean, that book was written 1,500 years ago. It's still applicable to the way that we live our lives today.
Right, very powerful.
And so, that I think that longevity is huge when it comes to me personally reading a book and extracting as much as I can from it. I like to read old books that have been around and stood the test of time. But not to say that there are not many phenomenal books that have been written over the last few years, and even upcoming new books that are just coming out. There's gems in every arena, but for the most part, you want real gems, look for books that have been around for a while.
Perfect. Now, I'm always curious, especially, we're going to talk a little bit about the haters, is a lot of people like to challenge, especially people that are speaking truth about help and motivation and all that stuff. There's always these haters that say, well, it's easy for you. You don't struggle like me. You don't know what I'm going through, because they see you so put together, right? They think that you don't know what their struggles are. That's one thing that haters say. But then another thing I can see haters saying is that with you having this message, they have this expectation of you being perfect, because so you're never late for an appointment because you're Mr. Time Management, kind of things like that.
Right.
How do you deal with the haters in those two aspects, the two different aspects of haterade?
Well, the first thing I would say is that in some capacity, with that first point that you made about how, you don't know my struggle, that person that would, the hater that would say that, in some capacity, they're right, man. They are right, because I don't know their journey. I don't know what it's like to be in their shoes. And if I had been in their shoes, then maybe I'd be saying the same thing about somebody else that was, succeeding or based on my own so-called perception of what success is. And so, we never know what anybody's journey is like until we step foot in their shoes. And so that's not necessarily really for me to say. All I can say is that I have struggled as well. I've struggled to depths that most of my friends and people that I know have not struggled. I've gone to lower lows than a lot of folks, and it's not to compare because again you can't compare struggle. But when people say that you don't know what it's like, I do know what it's like. I do know what it's like to not be able to barely be able to afford food, for your electricity to go out in your house. I know what that's like. Do you know what that's like? Because if you don't, then maybe don't judge me and maybe work on yourself. Because that's always the key, is that rather than, can you imagine, for example, if you went to the doctor and you told the doctor, hey doc, I'm feeling really, really sick. My stomach's hurting. I've got this terrible headache. And the doctor says, you know what? I know exactly what it is. I'm gonna prescribe you this medicine. And then he writes you a script, and then he hands it to you, and then he says, I want you to go home, and I want you to knock on your neighbor's door and give him this prescription.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, that's great, doctor. I feel really good now. Most people do. That sounds absurd, but most people do this in another way. They try to change everybody else and complain about everybody else without changing themselves. How about we only focus on taking our own medicine and not trying to give other people medicine? How about we focus on changing ourselves, and then once we change ourselves, something miraculous happens. The rest of our environment changes because we elevated ourselves or we started the path of changing ourselves. That's really what it's all about. Everybody's struggle is different. Everybody's got their own story. Everybody's got their own struggles to some capacity. So the idea is not to, I don't let that affect me, man. To really answer your question, I don't allow it to affect me. I really try to see that person's pain, even if they're pointing the finger and even if they're saying that you don't know what it's like. They don't know what I've been through, because I know that I don't know what they've been through. And so everybody's journey is different. Can't point fingers. What I always try to do is inspire folks to focus on themselves, changing themselves first, and then watching everything else change around them, because we can't change other people.
Now, what about being forgiving of yourself? Since, I've noticed this, and this is, correct me if you, or not correct me, see if you feel this way. So, I dubbed myself on the internet as Mr. Positivity, positive filter, positive. And then I have this unrealistic expectation from others and myself that I'm always going to be happy or positive. And then I get down on myself when I don't have a good day. And so maybe flipping that for you, you have coined yourself or branded yourself as Mr. Productive or Mr. Goal Setting. But how have you addressed when you have your own struggles with time management or productivity or goal setting or motivation? How do you manage that?
Yeah, I don't always have perfect days. Far from it. There's days when I don't wake up at 4:45 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
There are days when I don't feel like doing anything. There are days when, all I did was procrastinate the entire day,
Mm-hmm.
and that happens. And all I can do is share that with people to help folks. I mean, because nobody's ever going to do it right all the time. If somebody says that they are, then they are definitely lying to you. If somebody presents themselves as somebody who is always,
Positive.
unshakable, perfect,
Yes.
then they are BSing you to the maximum, because nobody is like that. I think the best thing to do, no matter how you brand yourself, is to share that, hey, I'm not doing this perfectly. I'm teaching this stuff, and I might be a little bit ahead of you, but that's only because I've had forever with this material. That's only because I spend a lot of time with it. You might surpass me one day, or I'm on this journey with you. I always think of it that way. I hate, and I've listened to a lot of different speakers. I've read a lot of different authors. I know many of them personally, and one thing is that I've realized is that I connect, and many people connect, most people connect with people when they're teaching material, sharing it, writing it, speaking about it, whatever. When they present it in a way that says, "Hey, man, I'm on this journey with you." Not do do this, then I'm Mr. Perfect, but hey, I this was my struggle. It took me a long time to figure out how to make it happen in my own life to achieve what I believe to be success, and this is how I made it happen. It wasn't easy. I struggled, and I want to share my journey with you, and hopefully help you achieve your own dreams and ambitions and goals. And so I think that's key, man.
That's right, and that's cool. And that's what I try to tell people when I say positive filter. It's like, hopefully me focusing on well-being and happiness and strategies for well-being means these are strategies I try for myself, but also doesn't mean I'm happy all the time. And I have more days too.
And that would be kind of unhealthy if we were happy all the time.
My dial's never on 10 all the time. On my happiness scale, I try to tell people I try to float around a 7 or 8. And days
that's
not
solid happiness.
Some days I feel like 9, and then I spike at 10 only for a couple moments. I'm a 10. But you can't live at 10 at all times,
No.
It's not realistic.
That's called delusion.
Yeah, that's probably called you're on drugs or you're or mentally ill.
Crack cocaine. That's what it's called.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's probably what
dopamine.
So what would be okay? So I definitely think one of my favorite episodes by yours, and I still go back and visit. I'm actually going to copy you. So I'm telling you right now, you can copyright it, but I'm gonna do one of my favorite episodes is when you turned 30 and you did or 31. I think you did 31. You did your lessons. And you did all the lessons. I really love that episode because you just said these are things I learned in life, and they're just random tips. I know you don't have that in front of you at all, but if you can just start rattling off some of those tips for the listeners, that was my favorite episode. What were some things in Dean's life that were like, these are my 10 or whatever I want to share with the listeners? That was I think it was one of my favorite episodes. I want to give a little statement to that, but also I'm going to put that link in the show notes because I want people to listen to that full episode. That's my favorite episode.
Awesome. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed I enjoyed writing that article version and actually doing the podcast. And a lot of people, still email me every week saying that it was helpful, and that feels really good. So the first thing that comes to mind from that 30 life lessons is the idea that some of your listeners, many of them perhaps, have probably heard about this nurse named Bronnie Ware, I believe her name was, who wrote a book about she was in geriatrics, like she would visit retirement homes, and she was a nurse for people that were at the end of their lives, like that were on their deathbeds, and she asked them, what are your biggest regrets in life? Like, what is it that you really regret? And some of their answers, she found consistencies, like patterns in them, and I really found that to be a very meaningful thing to take to heart. And one of the things that people were responding, I mean, these are people that are about to die, mind you. They don't have, they're on their way out. They're on their deathbed. So this is what I really regret. They look back on their lives at 80, 90, 100 years old, and they say, God, I wish I had spent more time with my family.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had done more things that matter to me. I wish I had, felt the fear and taken action anyway. They talk about experiences that they didn't take. I wish I had focused less on work and more on my health. And things like these are very cliche responses, but like they are meaningful if you really think about it. Like how much time are we spending on these basic things? And what I like to boil it down to is, I don't remember if I shared this piece on my life lessons thing, so I don't have it in front of me, but one thing that I always do every day is I have this acronym called PIES, P-I-E-S. And each letter on the acronym stands for our 4 levels of intelligence. Everybody knows about IQ, right? That's your mental quotient. But there are 3 others. There's physical intelligence, then there's your mental intelligence, your IQ, then there's your EQ, which is emotional intelligence, and then there's your SQ, which is your spiritual intelligence. And every day I make sure that I do at least one thing within each of those categories.
Yes.
And so, that's really important in terms of keeping yourself recharged and renewed. And then another one is, let's see. Of course, you got to have stretch goals. That's so important. Have actually like ambitious goals that matter to you, that you can actually get excited about when you wake up in the morning. That's really important. And if you want to know, everybody's heard about SMART goals. I don't think that SMART goals are always necessarily effective. They keep people in the weeds more than they keep people up in the sky. I think a great effective method that I picked up from a book written by Charles Duhigg called Smarter, Faster, Better is this combination of combining a really huge stretch goal with SMART goals, meaning specific. Have a stretch goal, like, I want to make $1 million, or I want to run a marathon, or I want to, place in a bodybuilding competition, or whatever. Something huge, something ambitious that is really going to get your blood flowing, going to get your heart beating a little bit, really going to get you going. So have a stretch goal and then attach a SMART plan to it. Something specific. What are the specific things I'm going to do? What is it? How am I going to make this measurable? How am I going to make this actionable? Is this realistic? And how can I make it time bound? So have something that's a stretch goal and then have a SMART plan, a specific plan to help yourself achieve it. I think that's huge. Huge.
I like that. That got me fired up because I have some stretch goals and I got some smart ways to go about it. And I like so let's we're almost near the end of the episode, but I want to you make sure that you put in what we're going to talk about today. I want you to talk about just briefly about your morning rituals, your goal setting and habits. I want to get you an opportunity to talk about that briefly, or some quick tips for those things: morning habits, morning rituals, goal setting and habits for the listeners. Obviously, also encourage them to follow up with the podcast for more, your podcast for more extended information on that. But what would be some quick bullets that people can do or implement those things right now?
Okay, so you said morning rituals.
Goal setting and habits, those things that you brought up.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, morning rituals. I can tell you that something that you've probably heard before, which is if you can win the morning, you can win the day.
Oh, yes.
And what I have found in my own life is that when I start my morning with sort of this predetermined ritual that matters to me, that I made for myself and my own sort of where I'm at in life, my own ambitions and my own sort of habits that I want to maintain, is if I can hit that morning ritual, then the rest of the day just kind of falls right in place. And so for me, that morning ritual goes like this. I rise at 4:45 a.m., between 4:45 and 5 a.m. And immediately upon rising, I have a liter of water. So some of these things are really tiny, really small, but they matter to me. And really, for your general health, I would highly suggest as soon as you wake up, smash a huge glass of water before even brushing your teeth. Just drink a huge glass of water, like a liter of water if you can. And that will get your blood going, because imagine, can you go 8 hours throughout the day without having a sip of water or some kind of liquid?
Wake up dehydrated.
You're dehydrated the whole night. So your body soaks up that water as soon as you rise. And so I get up, I have a liter of water, I have my vitamins, and then I have a green, and then I, do my morning business, and then I, I make a green juice, which is just pulverized, pounded up spinach, celery, ginger, lemon. Tell me if you don't. I can go in as detail as possible, or I can go high level as possible. I have a green juice.
Yeah, that's good. I just want to say I like just the bullet point part is that you have the morning ritual. If you win the morning, you win the day.
You win the morning, you win the day. Bottom line. If you can do at least one thing physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually in your morning ritual, and ideally, this is key.
Yeah.
Without going too deep, is set at least one big thing that you need to accomplish for this day. If nothing else was done, and you did at least this one thing, if you can set that intention, write it down physically, and keep it in front of you throughout the day, if you can do that one big thing, then you will feel accomplished for that day, because that was the intention that you set when you woke up.
I like that.
And that's what mattered to you. You might not have gotten anything else done, but at least you got that done.
I like that. And we have to have you on the guest. I mean, you're dropping too much knowledge to fit into 1 hour. So
thanks, man.
Here's the part of the show we lost called Shot for Shot. So give me an opportunity to ask you any question that you want, and I get to ask you any random question I want. So do you want to go first or I go first?
Definitely you go first, because I don't know how this works. By doing it with me, I'll learn.
So here's my question, and here's how it goes. So I'm Dean. In 2019, I will fill in the blank. What will you do in this year? So you put it on the podcast, you're saying it out to the world, and then you look back on this year and you have accomplished that. So Dean, in 2019 will
successfully launch deanslibrary.com, which is the Netflix of personal development.
All right. You're here first. That's great. So we made it, we spoke it into existence. That works for me. Okay, I just positively trolled you. Like Sam Nang. I did a Sam Nang to you, where I'm going to say, shout out to Dean and his library coming soon. Like you did to me. So.
Well, I like it. It's good, man.
All right, your question for me.
All right, my question for you is what's it going to, I'll flip it back on you, man. The 2019 question. I, Phil, Positive Philter Wilkerson.
Yeah.
In 2019 will what?
I kind of I front loaded my goals, so I'm already knocking them out. But because I already said I was going to launch a business, and I did that. I said I was going to do it. So I want to, in this year, I want to get back to deadlifting again and powerlifting. And
that's a good one.
I haven't started. So I'm positive, like I'm putting it out there that I'm not going to be squatting like that. I don't really miss squatting. If that sounds, I know I'm going to get some haters in the powerlifting world, but I do miss deadlifting. That was my favorite thing in the world.
Yeah, I love deadlifting, man. That's one of my favorite exercises.
So I, Philip Wilkerson, in some aspect, will get back to deadlifting routinely in 2019 and do it.
Good stuff.
So, Dean, we got to the end of our episode. This is the opportunity I give all guests to do shout-outs to people, family, friends, people, mentors, whatever, and then also plugs, the things, the ventures that they're working on their social media. So the platform and the stage is yours, however you like. Shout-outs and plugs.
Sure. So shout out to you, Phil, for doing this podcast. And I remember, when you first started it, we spoke and we talked about how you were going to get it started and how you were going to do it. And, one thing that I believe I mentioned to you was that makes you different, and I believe is going to really, allow you to achieve your dreams and achieve your goals and your ambitions, is that you actually did it. People are constantly asking, how do you start a podcast? How do you start a business? How do you start doing this and that? But they don't do it. And, what I found out with you shortly after we met is that you talked to me about it. I told you about it. Shortly thereafter, you did it. And So shout out to you, my man.
I appreciate that.
And here we are. We're in the middle of an interview. So good stuff, man. I love it. And plugs. So folks can find me at deanbokhari.com. That's DENBOKHARI.com, or at meaningfulhq.com. That's the homepage for the Meaningful Show podcast. So you can listen to all the episodes there, and you can subscribe to my newsletter at either of those websites. And if you are interested in the book summaries, you can visit getflashnotes.com.
Not QuickBooks.
So, yeah, not QuickBooks. That's a different thing. You can check that out too if you want, if you need help with that. But yeah, it's got nothing to do with me.
As I said earlier, Dean, shout out to you. I'm always going to shout you out. You always have a place in my heart and a place in my journey and my professionalism, because, as I said earlier, you didn't have to take that time to talk to me on the phone, and you didn't have to take that time to help me. And things like that means a lot. And I've always give people appreciation for people that took their time to help me. And like I said, you told me what to do and I did it. So it's like, it's not that hard. Like I tell anyone, if you want to start a podcast, I'll help you. Like you help me. I play it, pay it forward.
Pay it forward. Yeah.
But as I said earlier with you too, like I'll give you the information. It's on you to take it and run with it. And if you have a podcast out there and I helped you with it and you become way more successful, I'm so happy for you, because, that's what the journey is about, is helping other people. I don't really care if you surpass me or whatever. It's that, I'm still going to get some credit. Like, yo, I helped that dude. He's famous.
Yeah, man, absolutely. And sometimes people move on and they share stuff that they learn from you, but, and they blow up. But, hey, your fingerprints are on it.
Yes,
because
I take
you
credit.
made an impact too by helping them.
But I definitely appreciate you, Dean.
Thank you, man. Appreciate that.
I saw you briefly at a Sam Ming's wedding and gave you a big hug. I was like, Mac, my wife was like, who is that? I said, Maggie, that's my podcast mentor. She's like, oh, she's all about you. So, whenever you're on the East Coast, we'll collab. We'll get together. We'll link up whenever you're back.
Sure, man.
And someday I gotta be famous enough where I can get out there to the West Coast and speak or something like that. But
come on out here, brother.
We'll see.
They need you.
So thank you so much. Please check out his show. As I said earlier, I listen to his show. I'm not just having him on my podcast because he helped me with getting a podcast started. He also has some really good things to help you get motivated and really get you started and get you organized. So please check out Dean's show, The Meaningful Show. So check it out. It really helps me. And they're not long either. They really help you quick, 15 minutes, you knock out for the day and you feel more productive. So check out his show. Thank you for listening to the podcast. If you have any questions for the podcast, call 571-336-6560. Dean, really appreciate you being on the show, and have a great day.
Thanks for having me, man.
There we go.
Boom, boom. Done.
Yeah, done.
Good stuff, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening to Positive Philter, a podcast that focuses on family, friends, career, with a little self-help along the way. If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with your family and friends, and like the Facebook page, Spreading Positivity of Movement. Thanks for listening.